Thank you all for joining us. I'm excited about today's webinar about common mistakes or pitfalls to avoid on your medical website. My name is Marc Kleinman. I think a lot of people on the call probably know me from my role as Vice President of Sales with Raider8. Raider8, of course, helps medical practices with their online reputation management, building online reviews and that sort of thing, which is, of course, not what we're here to talk about today. So I am going to introduce Tatum, who will do most of the talking today, and I'll simply facilitate. But I'm very pleased to welcome and introduce Tatum Hindman, who's the president and founder of tbhcreative. TBH is a marketing company that specializes in websites as well as other services, specifically for healthcare providers and medical practices. Tatum, you've been doing that, what, 20 years now? Almost 20 years? Yeah, so she really knows her stuff, and our work with TBH allows me to say that they're particularly good at identifying what's not working with a website and fixing those problems. So you've got a really great resource today who's going to help you guys understand what can go wrong on a website and how to avoid those issues and perhaps even correct them. So with that, Tatum, thank you so much for joining us. I am going to turn it over to you momentarily. I want to let our audience know we encourage you to participate and ask your questions. So whether you're using the chat or the Q&A, please enter your questions or comments, and I'll be sure to keep an eye on those. And Tatum, I may interrupt you over the course of the next 30 minutes or so to make sure folks are being heard and having their questions answered. And we'll also try to leave just a few minutes at the very end to clean up any remaining questions. So thank you all once again. With that, Tatum, welcome. And I'd love to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Marc. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Welcome to this webinar. We are going to be discussing common pitfalls in your healthcare website design and development. I love talking about this topic. I could probably talk all day, so I'm going to do my best to keep this into the 30 minutes we have planned and share what I've learned about working on hundreds of healthcare websites, small and large, over the past 20 years. If there's time at the end, like Marc said, it would be great to talk about have some time for questions. I am going to mention some resources along the way, so just be sure those will be distributed out or available to you after this as well. So let's go ahead and dive in. So pitfall number one, fail to plan. There are a number of reasons why organizations do a website redesign, and it's usually considered a large project, which comes with some pressure, I have heard. Rightfully so, I believe. Your website is your 24/7 location, really, getting a lot of visitors, possibly more than your real location will be getting, and oftentimes the very first touch point. So even still, given its priority, we still often see this planning phase being cut short or missing steps. So our advice to you is to fully map out a plan and really think like a business. I do have a graphic here showing building of a house, which I think has a lot of similarities and can be relatable, more relatable maybe than building a website, of the planning that's involved in that. There are endless choices. The range of cost is extremely wide. There are a lot of providers. Things are changing. Parts of it can be confusing. So there are a lot of the things that you feel when building a website, because you're not doing it every year, usually, every few years. So the planning step is extremely important for the success, and we just want to emphasize that. Giving you some more specific things that we do in planning as we start from the top, answering these questions and documenting them to kind of guide the entire process is very important and leads to significant success from what we've seen. So even just fundamental, why are you doing this project? Why is it important? Everyone on your team and your provider team should be aligned on that. But also, what are we going to call success? So 6 months from now, a year from now, what does that really look like? And defining that up front so the decisions that you make for smaller pieces can come back to that. And even this would be nice to have, does it really impact our success? You have that clarity. Thinking about what's important in a partner is also really important on your side as the organization choosing to do a website. What resources do you have internally? What are your expectations? Thinking about that up front before you start talking to new partners is a really good way to match up with the right firm. And last, but certainly not least on this particular list, thinking and understanding your top personas and what they need and want from a website. We see a lot of people doing full marketing personas, which we do as well. But when you're talking about a website, we're talking about website personas. So once you get them to the website, what's their journey, what's their point, and what do they need and want once they've hit the website, and making your decisions based around that. We're certainly going to talk more about that today. Sounds super easy, but there are some tricky parts. The ones that we hit on and you should spend some more time on are defining requirements, especially those functional ones. Those are often underestimated and underthought through. How are we going to build this? How are we going to maintain this? What's the technology that we should use? What are the pros and cons of these different approaches? Content is another one. The content audit, just doing a website and carrying content over as is usually not the right approach. So how much content needs to be reworked? What is the true status of our content, our SEO, and all of those pieces? Another tricky part is understanding the costs and the timelines and being realistic with those expectations. So the better you can do at that, the more success the project will be. Setting expectations with the broader team, the leadership team, of when this might launch. And being realistic and understanding that also is really important, because you don't, even if it's going great, you don't want to go back and tell them, well, we need this much extra time. Nobody wants to do that. And then I think I've heard, selecting a partner can be hard. You maybe selected the wrong partner in the past. I have heard that a lot with websites. So planning up front, I think, can help you select that right partner. I do have a couple resources that we'll be able to provide out to you. One is a website comparison worksheet tool, and another one is a questionnaire. It goes a little bit deeper to those questions I rattled off. So we'll be sure to send those out for you guys. Pitfall number 2, and I should say these are not necessarily in the order of importance, but these first couple are really top ones. So ignoring your patient needs. It seems so obvious, but in healthcare, there's just a huge amount of information. There's a huge number of people influencing the decisions, and there's so many moving parts. It is easy to lose track of that. So our recommendation is to fully immerse yourself in the patient's mindset up front and throughout the process, doing proper research about your target patient and your expertise, how they're feeling, what their needs are, and building a website that really offers them what they need and want in combination with what's important to your brand to communicate. Across the board, these are the things that we hear again and again of what patients want to do on your website. They want to make an appointment. They want to find a provider. They want location information. They want to conduct healthcare research. The example that we have, I thought, did a really nice job. Their actual mobile experience is cleaner than their desktop, but right there you see those 3 choices right up front. Another piece of understanding your audience needs or not losing track of it is just to remember them as people. So oftentimes in healthcare, buying involves pain, concerns, fear, and a lot of other emotions. So, when we say make it easy for them to find a provider, I mean, it's because of what it can't be hard. It's your job to make it easier. And, they're dealing with some important stuff in their life, not buying a pair of shoes. So another thing to remember is that in general, in all industries, not just healthcare, users today in 2022, they're impatient and they want things to be easy. And so if it's not easy, they will leave and they will have a more negative impression of your organization. Another thing to remember is that different users are at varying stages in their journey. So even, in healthcare, if we're using some examples, someone who needs urgent care, they need that location information, that phone number, they need that fast. They're ready to take action versus someone who might be considering hip replacement surgery. they're probably avoiding your appointment button and they're looking for good, valuable information. So those are very different journey paths on your website, and your website should accommodate both of those needs and lead them down the funnel when they're ready with the right information. Last on my list today is mobile and desktop. And the clients that we're working with in healthcare have 60+% mobile users. So I don't know if that's universal, but we're seeing that pretty common. And that's a big chunk. And even knowing that, I don't think anyone on this call is going to be surprised by that necessarily. But there's still a lot of deficits in the mobile experience that we see and that we're working and spending more time. So as you're planning your project, is organic, natural shifting of code sufficient for some of these important activities? And oftentimes we are prioritizing them and building something that has a better user experience and ensures the mobile is as good, if not better, than desktop. I thought we might just take a look at a journey path, across the website, and how that, again, we're talking about don't lose sight of your buyer, your audience, patient. What you're looking at here is this gray line. It's kind of the path of that patient from discovery, they not even sure they need a provider, or they're definitely looking for a provider, to selecting a provider, to are they staying with you, to true advocacy. And some of these statistics I think are really important as we're talking about what the buyer needs and wants. Just looking at this first one and the priority of a website, even 83% visit a healthcare website before booking an appointment. So again, they're coming to your website location before they're coming to your physical location. 56% consult 3 different online sources. So they're doing their research. It's at their fingertips. So it's just so important, this online presence today. And then 3 times more are coming in from Google search than non-search activities to bring them into your site. So the importance of, optimizing your page, prioritizing that as part of the plan. I think consideration is a good point. Obviously, consideration is less important for something like urgent care, but 88% will read reviews for a provider even after they've been referred. So their best friend says, go see Dr. Joe. They're still going to read those reviews and make an impression. So it's still a factor, very important, even more so than the referral. 66% of internet users look online for information about a specific disease or medical problem. So I see this as an opportunity. This is, don't just talk about your specialties and treatments. Of course, you want to do that. But also there's this opportunity to nurture and educate and answer questions, because 60% of users are looking for that, and that can help you stand out. So, especially for those, we're talking about ROI a little later in this call, surgeries and higher value things, they're going to be doing a little more due diligence, and that can make a big impact. 60% of users today want to make an appointment online. They prefer to go to your website to do that versus call. And I thought this was kind of interesting just to think about the leakage. So, nearly half would decide, even if they're, been referred or looked at other things on your site and been happy, if the physician listing doesn't have enough information, they will choose not to book. So I thought it was an interesting consideration. So pro tip for you, make it easy for patients to find the type of doctor they're looking for if you're a multi-specialty organization. So you're listing all your doctors and they have to click into different ones to see, I have shoulder pain. Does this one do it? That's frustrating. So, a filter or, presenting that in a better way, or at least, again, that journey path really can have an impact on conversion and patient satisfaction. You've also probably seen the body part. So, the layman's terms, not necessarily the medical terms, are really important to remember when thinking about that patient. General recommendation, whether you're doing your website and planning it now and it's all new, or you're just trying to fix some things on your current site, think about that user and try to do those things that we just talked about. Is it easy? I have this real problem. What is it? Get specific with yourself and then play the role of going through your site. There's some probably quick wins and fixes that you can do looking on mobile and desktop to really improve, who you're trying to reach and serve. Another thing that you might look at closer, and I think people sometimes skip, is reading your website verbiage, including the tone. And people launch a site and they like never really read it again. And the doctors might read it and bring something up and you make a fix, right? But it should match the experience they would receive when talking to a provider or coming into the office. And if not, that's definitely an indicator of like, this is a big project to tackle that is very important. All right, so we talked about planning as a pitfall to avoid not doing that and to spend the appropriate amount of time, as well as the audience needs. Number 3 is don't skimp on your physician profiles. Across the board in every demographic, we see patients choosing providers online. This is the first impression, maybe the only impression, and it's your opportunity to present these doctors in the very best light, and your competition is doing it. So this is really just an important piece of the website. We saw some of these stats. Again, 63% choose one provider over another based on strong online presence. 55% want to see that 4 or 5-star review from a provider, even if they've been referred, and half will decide not to book if it's an incomplete listing. So what can you do? Make sure that each doctor has their own dedicated webpage. Optimize the page for whatever type of specialty near me searchers. Add actual patient reviews on the physician profile. You can see we've got the rater 8 on this example. It was really easy to execute. Each physician page should also have the same exact name, address, phone match as their respective Google business profiles. So some quick hits, some things you can do. I did have some examples in there, but make them real people. Tell as much as you can, because that's how you're going to stand out. Pitfall number 4, don't make it difficult to navigate. So we've touched on this a little bit. I'm going to hone in on it because it's just so important. But again, these users are in stressful or difficult situations, and your website should make the process easier. Providing an intuitive website structure makes a difference in conversion, ROI, success, and patient satisfaction. So this one feels easier, not always though, but don't have as many choices in the nav. What really needs to be in there? Don't have unnecessary mega menus. It's just overwhelming. You're not Amazon. Don't use medical terms or cutesy brand names. You might have come up with a name for a certain, use it on the page, but not in the nav. And think beyond navigation. Obviously, that's where I would start, but how are you interlinking on pages? Is it naturally flowing to the next insightful piece of information? These are all parts of making your website easy for the user to find what they need and navigate and take action. So just a couple examples. This is a pro tip being to simplify and prioritize your navigation structure. So oftentimes when we're doing a larger website initiative, we will go in and fix navigation as kind of a quick win while we're working on the bigger project. And so, just as an example, this is the before and this is the after. There were 3 navigation structures. Your eyes were like here, and then they were here, and there was some duplication. So without compromising anything and streamlining the choices, we were able to get that into one row, prioritize the bigger actions with buttons, and just simplify the choice and where your eyes might go for the user. Pitfall number 5, don't involve too many people in decisions, or another way to say that might be involve the right people at the right time. So having too many stakeholders or too many approval authorities, really what it does, it adds time to the project and it can add cost. We just launched a project that had 12 people on every email. I'm not kidding. So 3 divisions joining together, that's what they wanted. And it did cost more and it did take more time. It was still successful, but if we can streamline that, it is more successful. The other thing that it leads to with too many people is just more compromises. We really know this is the right path, but we have 5 opinions and we're trying to appease, and you get this hodgepodge of a solution. So, coming back to what can you do? First, I'll show a quick example. I'm showing this example to kind of mask the name. We feel that in looking at this, this probably is the result of somebody getting a lot of opinions and they're just trying to make everyone happy, right? So they've got, again, navigation number 1 button, kind of like navigation up here, and then another navigation with drop choice. Just so many choices for the user, like too many that it can feel overwhelming, but likely too many cooks in the kitchen. But it's often then too easy to overlook true priority. Like they have an ER link, it's not till the middle of the page, really. But like Amazon Smile is really important at the top. So, it's just an example. I'm making fun, not to be critical, but when too many people get in, you get a little bit strayed from these goals you set up during planning. So our recommendation in the process that has worked really well for us is involve the stakeholders in the beginning. They need to be heard. We want them to feel heard. Get them to agree on the goals and the priorities, have them weigh in on scope, priorities, things that are included, maybe not included, must have, nice to have, and then assign a project owner who represents the team and enable them to make key decisions. Use data and rationale for decisions. So if they come back and ask why, you have these reasonings, and most things should in a strategic website. Again, keep that user in mind and use that. Well, the user said they needed this. That's why we placed it here. And then track and measure results. Another pro tip that I have for you is, and you guys I think can probably relate to this, is there's going to still be the squeaky wheel. There's going to still be the extra request. Make a plan for how do you handle those things. So, can we put it on the homepage at the top? No, we cannot. But we have this place and we have these social promos that we can do, and you have them ready to go. And, you can solve that problem and have a place without maybe messing up the priorities of our goals and the user needs at once. Pitfall number 6 is don't lose control of the brand. Their practices can lose control of the brand in a number of ways. This first example that I'm showing is when your digital footprint, we are talking about websites, but your whole digital footprint looks like it's multiple organizations. Well, that's obviously not good. So here's what a website looks like, but then on Facebook, it looks like the logo is actually different. Like why? And it's different colors, right? So one thing that we do is take a collage snapshot of top sites listed in your branded SERP, and it will kind of highlight where you have mismarked visuals or like a logo that you used to use 10 years ago. And it's just then a matter of making a plan to go through and swap those out. It is visuals and messaging, so it also suggests looking at the message. Like it's not the tagline you used to always use. Another brand related thing that we see, and I would bet a lot of you guys can relate to, is when providers want to set up separate unbranded sites and profiles and what that does to your brand. The intent is usually good, but it's actually hurting the organization and the brand. And it actually can be confusing for the users to see that way. Where do I go to make an appointment? Right? And you compete with yourself in terms of SEO when that happens. So we know this comes up. We know that it happens. Our recommendation is to define and enforce a strict policy in your organization, and then provide options for these providers when they want to do these extra advertising or have more on their profiles. We can do that. We can add a second part to your profile, or, we can promote you on social, but you shouldn't have your own. It's just have those things in place so that you can manage it, and then keep all your website content centralized. This is good for your overall brand, SEO advantage, and it reduces user confusion. Another brand deficiency that we run into is related to photos. I could probably talk all day on this, but I think you visually can, hopefully you can see this. I do some design, so it just kills me when I see things like this, but it's stock photo. Okay, we can't all, have custom photo for everything. That is okay. But there is ways to select fonts that look, to select photos that look like they're in the same family or treat them in the same family. But certainly don't pick the one that your competitors are also using. Did I jump? Sorry. This has 438 people using the same photo, this one right here, right? And it doesn't even have anything to do with orthopedics. So be selective on photos, plan in your budget time for, better photos, custom photos where you can. Pitfall number 7, underestimating time and commitment and budget trade-offs. It's what are we going to do internally? What can we do? What should we do? So our top considerations are your team's expertise, your team's resources, and the cost of their time. What items are must-have versus nice to have. Reviewing the time needs for who's going to be involved in each one of those reviews. I said in the beginning, like if you're setting a timeline, you don't want to say we missed a timeline. So what do you really need at each milestone? If you need 2 weeks, okay. If you can do it in 3 days, then your timeline's obviously much shorter, but what's reasonable? What's reasonable for testing on these large sites? Don't skimp on testing. It's a priority. It should have weeks, not days. And then that content planning is also a big one. Which leads me right into pitfall number 8. Don't forget final steps. You're like so excited. It's about to launch. We do a big thing where we launch and celebrate. And we want you to have a party. It is a big thing. But we have seen, maybe you take internally some production work and then there's missing alt tags and images that are megabytes and you launch it. There's just these mistakes that are easy to fix. Don't skimp on your final steps. So, testing, technical SEO scans, usability testing, as it comes together, not we did it up front, we forgot to do it at the end. Accessibility testing, redirect planning. You don't want a bunch of errors in Google as you launch a new site. Are you going to archive the old site or not? Do you need to pull down some screen grabs, IT coordination, integrations, tracking codes? So it's really important to plan, it could be a month ahead, 2 weeks ahead, 1 week ahead, the day of launch, the time of launch, during launch, after launch. All of those things should be mapped out. So I'm going to share this resource that we use. It's a great starting point. Usually our projects have some, unique things in them, but I'll be able to share that resource. And just remember, it is exciting to launch, but don't forget the final steps. Last but not least, don't miss opportunities to track, measure, refine. And I think maybe this could have been number 1, but it goes right in with your planning. And if you've planned right, you've already established what are you tracking and reporting. And I think that's where people get confused. They get to the end and you open up Google Analytics and it's just so much data. What do you even look at? So, it's not over when you launch. It's a beautiful world of web where you can make changes and you see all this data. So prioritize this, prioritize it in your budget. You should have a partner helping you analyze this information and making smart changes on an ongoing basis. I'm sorry, I left 1 minute for questions.
That's okay. It was nice time management. And that was super helpful and valuable information. So thank you, Tatum. We may run a minute or 2 over, but I do want to throw a couple of questions your way. I think it was toward the end, pitfalls 7 and 9 are what I want to dig into a little bit. 7, you talked about don't underestimate and, manage expectations and that kind of thing. So give us some specifics. I know there's wide variance, but like a ballpark for what people should expect as far as timelines for a new website project, maybe even cost, again, knowing that there's a pretty wide range based on the project.
So timeline factors, content needs, if your content's in pretty good shape, your project will be much faster. Or if you're prioritizing doing part of it and the rest later, right? Big factor, we're talking months to a whole year difference in your timeline. Functionality, integrations. We had one project that really held up with an integration that IT was managing. You really can't predict that. To give you an example, our fastest healthcare project was about 500 some pages. New functionality was 5 months. They were like giving us feedback in 2 days, approvals to keep going. They did a bulk of the production work. That's why it went so fast. Probably the longest one we've worked on has been about 2 years. That was really slow reviews. They had an IT partner that, held up months on their end. We were waiting. So, more average 8 to 12 months.
Okay, great. And then the last pitfall was about measuring results. I'm sure there are lots of different metrics that you'd look to measure the success of a website, but what are a couple that are kind of top of mind, most important, and that allow you to kind of tie things to actual ROI?
Yeah, I mean, so there's always going to be some that you just feel, the website looks better, communicates better, it's less measurable, but you should see in your analytics just general longer on pages, things like that. We love to get down to conversion and ROI, and most of our clients have that on their list. So looking at form fills, appointments scheduled, even if we can get to surgeries where we can see the touches on the website, are great things to track and measure. And then you layer other marketing on it. What are the sources of that? What pages did they visit? What things did they do? I do have an example. If you guys can still see my screen, this is a really successful project of ours that followed these steps. Multi-location healthcare provider, results across the whole year. We launched their website, released 2 inbound campaigns, and started paid advertising. From the before website, they were getting about 200 online appointment requests per month, and they honestly didn't care about anything very much else, like appointment requests. It's tangible for them. When we launched, they immediately, within 3 months, we saw 500 per month in the first 3-month average. We layered additional marketing on, and in the first year saw 700 in a month. So, going down to what really matters, and then they were able on their end to even see how many of the requests turned into real patients. And I love it when we can see that, because we can see what type of patient, if we can get that data, which does involve more of a partnership if we're involved.
Great. And I'll try to be very, very quick, but we did have a couple of new questions come in at the very end. So let's just take kind of a minute to go through. For a solo practice, should the focus be on the practice name or the physician's name in terms of promoting, and where should the focus be?
I think both. Certainly if it's a single practitioner, the reputation of that practitioner is going to be well known and searched. So I would put energies in both. And that's what's the goal? Are they going to grow? So if the intent is to have growth, then really you want even spread. But if this is my practice, it's always going to be just me, I would very much promote the physician along with the practice and give the physician some priority.
Yeah, that's very analogous to the advice we offer on the online reviews side, which is you can't do one or the other. You have to do both in balance. And of course, you can have some variability in terms of where you weight that priority, but both are very important. We agree. Last thing, what's the most valuable advice you can give on existing websites? Because we've been talking a lot about building new websites, but are there things people can do to easily improve their existing website without a full overhaul?
So much, yes. I would do that tip on thinking about who your buyer is and those top things that they want, and going through, are they easy? And if you can identify where maybe it's not easy, oftentimes that's a quick fix. I would look at navigation. Is it simple, intuitive? Is it overwhelming? Those are things typically with a content management system you can change without a full overhaul, and you can test and measure. You can look at speed improvements, SEO improvements. Usually those are things you can do without, we're scrapping this and starting over.
Great. Well, we must wrap up. We're a few minutes over. Sorry, everyone, for taking a little bit more of your time than expected. Thank you so much, Tatum. That was super valuable. Just as a reminder, we're going to send everyone the recording link so you can revisit this if you'd like. I know Tatum has some resources. She's also going to share with you those worksheets and a few other things. So please be on the lookout for an email from us wrapping things up. And if you want to get in touch with us or with Tatum and TBH, you're welcome to respond to those emails and we'll connect the dots for you. Thank you again for joining. Thank you, Tatum. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.